Join us on this 9 miles kayak from Brockweir to Chepstow on the Wye River on the 17th of July 2022. If you like kayaking and are interested in the Wye River, then watch on to learn about what we encountered on this route, including Tintern Abbey, the limestone gorges of the lower Wye Valley, and Chepstow Castle. Stick around to the end for bonus content to help you if you were interested in kayaking this section of the river, including logistics such as parking, public transport, launch and landing locations, what equipment we used, recommendations for pubs and restaurants on the route, crucial information about potential safety and other issues on this route, and other useful information about kayaking the Wye River generally. I am Carlos, captain of the kayak crew. We are obsessed with kayaking and we are vlogging and blogging our exciting kayak journeys in which we explore the Wye River, the Monmouthshire and Brecon Canal, the Wales coast and other areas. If you're new here, then remember to click that subscribe button. So let's jump into the video of our kayak from Brockweir to Chepstow on the Wye River. We launched from Brockweir at about 11:30 a.m. We soon paddled past the quaint village of Tintern with its magnificent Cistercian Abbey, continuing downstream with the outgoing tide. Heavily wooded bluffs gradually gave way to white limestone and sandstone cliffs of the lower Wye Valley Gorge, including the Landcourt Reserve. We paddled past the remains of the famous Chepstow Castle and under the old Wye Bridge before finally landing at the pontoon at Chepstow Boat Club at about 1:30. It's about 11 a.m. and this is our launch spot just above Brockweir Bridge, and as you can see the tide still seems to be coming in. So we're going to inflate our kayak here just next to the launch spot at Brockweir. We set off downstream under Brockweir Bridge with the outgoing tide, which had turned very quickly as we were inflating our kayak on the bank. This thwarted our plans to launch from Brockweir about 45 minutes before high tide, so we knew that we'd be up against the clock to get to Chepstow Boat Club before the water dropped too low to land at the pontoon there. We can see that the tide is definitely going out already because there's lots of debris moving downstream with the outgoing tide. Paddling downstream from Brockweir, we could already feel the assistance that the outgoing tide was giving us as it added a couple of knots to our downstream progress. It's a really hot day today, so we've got a lot of sunscreen with us and also a lot of fluids, including a few ciders of course. The Wye River is tidal downstream from Brockweir, which is a couple of miles upstream from Brockweir. We've gone about 1.5 miles downstream from Brockweir and we're just coming up to Tintern. Tintern is a lovely village, it's well worth a visit. It sort of runs alongside the Wye on the western bank. Looks like a possible landing and launching spot over there on the western bank at Tintern. We're just passing the main sort of big car park in Tintern, near to the Abbey. Just a fairly fleeting view of Tintern Abbey as we head downstream. Tintern is of course famous for the large 12th century Cistercian Abbey, which is on the south side of the village. The present day remains of Tintern Abbey are a mixture of building works covering a 400-year period between 1131 and 1536. It's a very impressive site and attracts countless tourists all year round. We called back at Tintern Abbey after finishing the kayak for a closer look at the amazing abbey there. We're just downstream from Tintern now and about just over 2 miles downstream from Brockweir. We've just been overtaken by a motorised dinghy downstream of Tintern. High up above us on the east bank you've got the Devil's Pulpit, which is a viewpoint on limestone rock jutting out from the cliffs. We're about 3 miles downstream from Brockweir now. We seem to be flying down the river, I think partly due to the fact we're paddling pretty much constantly and also the tide taking us down as well. A lot of the banks are quite muddy on this lower stretch. There's not many places to actually land. We're almost 4 miles downstream from Brockweir now, and there's some cracking scenery with limestone cliffs coming up. These towering cliffs are some of the most dramatic scenery I think that we've passed on the on the Wye River so far. The water level seems to be dropping as the tide goes out and exposing more of the muddy banks as we go downstream. We seem to be really shifting downstream with the outgoing tide. This is definitely a stretch of river where you have to go with the tide, either upstream with the incoming tide or out with the outgoing tide. It's quite usual to have these muddy banks on tidal rivers like this as the tide goes out. You can see the usual range of the tide by the staining on the white cliffs over there. This is a very tidal section of river. You can see the lower Wye Valley gorge coming up with huge towering cliffs going straight down onto woodland and then salt marsh. These really impressive cliffs form part of the Landcourt Nature Reserve, a few miles north of Chepstow on the east bank. It's some rather unusual scenery with huge cliffs dropping straight down onto wood and then salt marsh. We're technically paddling straight down the border. On the left side you've got England and on the right side Wales. We're continuing down the lower Wye Valley Gorge. I think we're about 3 miles upstream from Chepstow now. We're about 2 miles upstream from Chepstow now. We just hope that we get to Chepstow Boat Club in time for us to get onto the pontoon before the water drops too low. There's definitely a lot more sort of estuarine mud being exposed on the banks as the tide drops and we get closer to Chepstow. Just over the top of that bank you can just about see the ramparts of Chepstow Castle coming into view. We're about a mile upstream from the boat club at Chepstow now, and Chepstow Castle is looming into view ahead of us. There's the castle ahead of us there, perched out on that limestone cliff overlooking the river. Chepstow is quite a relatively early castle. I think it was started back not long after the Norman conquest, back in the day of William the Conqueror. I've been to Chepstow Castle before quite a few times, but I gotta say it looks totally different viewed from the river. Absolutely amazing. We're less than a mile away from the pontoon now at the boat club, and downstream you can see the old Wye Bridge. We're just coming up to the old Wye Bridge in Chepstow, and we've got about half a mile to go to Chepstow Boat Club. It's coming up to 1:30, and we're not far now from the pontoon at the boat club. We hope the water level is still high enough to get onto it, because it's the only place to land at Chepstow apparently. There's our first sight of the pontoon coming up at the boat club in Chepstow, and to our relief it looks like the water level is just about high enough to get onto the bottom of the pontoon. That strange square opening in the cliffs over there on the east bank is called the Gloucestershire Hole apparently. So we're just going to land now at the pontoon at the boat club, and we're very relieved that we can still actually get onto it. As you can see, we've landed on the pontoon, and there's Archie with our trusty tandem kayak that we called the Bismarck. It's quite a steep climb up from the pontoon. Archie's gone ahead of me just to check that the natives are friendly. Archie has returned from his little reconnaissance, so it looks like it's safe to go up despite the large pirate flag flying up there. As you can see, we cut it a bit fine or timed it perfectly depending on your point of view, so the water was level with the bottom of the pontoon. Looks like we got to the pontoon in Chepstow just in time because the water is level with the bottom of the pontoon. What a great kayak. We're going to have a well-deserved cider in the boat inn. Regarding logistics, at Brockweir the best spot to park is probably a long lay-by, about 200 metres up the road from Brockweir Bridge on the west bank. While you can drop off your gear by the launch spot above Brockweir Bridge, we would not advise parking there since there is not much room. Also, presumably it is used by residents of the adjoining houses, who may get annoyed if kayakers kept taking up their parking areas. At Chepstow, the only landing spot we're aware of is the pontoon at the boat club by the boat inn. It is absolutely crucial that you get to this pontoon before the water level drops too low to get onto it. More on this later. We originally booked a taxi to take us back from Chepstow to Brockweir after finishing our kayak, and were quoted £20 by the taxi firm. We use inflatable kayaks, so we could simply have put this and our gear in the boot of the taxi. However, we cancelled the taxi because a friend who lives locally offered to meet us at Chepstow and take us back to Brockweir. There is a bus 69 operated by Anslow coaches that runs between Chepstow and Brockweir, which could also be used to get back to the start. Note that there are 2 bus stops on the A466 near to Brockweir Bridge on the west bank. Both Tintern and Chepstow have a number of good pubs, a couple of which are mentioned here. The Boat Inn at Chepstow is right by the pontoon where you can land and launch. The beer garden overlooks the river at Chepstow. The interior decor of the Boat Inn has a nautical theme with lots of boat inn paraphernalia. The Anchor Inn is a large pub near the riverside and the Abbey in Tintern. The Anchor Inn is set in a lovely old building. Tintern is a great place to visit whether or not you are kayaking on the Wye. Regarding dangers and issues, this southernmost section of the Wye River is very tidal, and the paramount issue is to get to the pontoon at Chepstow with the water level still above the bottom of the pontoon. We would suggest that you use the website link below for checking the tide times for Chepstow, since we had several conflicting tide forecasts for Chepstow from different websites. You should launch at Brockweir at least 1 hour before high tide at Chepstow in order to give you time to get to Chepstow, less than 2 hours after high tide. Whilst the tide will still be coming in at Brockweir at that time, you should be able to make reasonable headway downstream against it, and it will soon turn anyhow. Remember that high tide at Brockweir will be about 40 minutes later than at Chepstow, because it is 9 miles upstream. Secondly, you need to check the height of the high tide. You ideally need a high tide of about 11 metres or more on the day of your kayak, in order to give you enough time to kayak from Brockweir to Chepstow in time for the water level to still be above the bottom of the pontoon. On the day of our kayak, the high tide was about 12.7 metres. The website for Chepstow Boat Club, which is linked below, says that the pontoon is accessible 2 hours or so before and after high tide, and when the water level is 9.5 metres or more. Special thanks to Chepstow Boat Club, by the way, for the use of their pontoon, which is very much appreciated. If you get to Chepstow too late and cannot land at the pontoon, then we do not know anywhere else to land at Chepstow. I walked downstream a bit and also flew the drone to recon downstream, but I couldn't see anywhere else to land other than at the pontoon. If you miss the tide and cannot land at the pontoon, then your only option may be to drag and crawl your way up the steep banks through estuarine mud while trying to pull your kayak and gear. Not the best way to end a kayak. On this trip we used a tandem full drop stitch inflatable kayak. It is essentially the same as the Sandbank Style Optimal or the Evolution kayak, which can be bought in the UK, apart from a few minor differences. The drop stitch construction allows the chambers to be inflated to a much higher air pressure, similar to an inflatable paddleboard. We think you could use most types of kayak or canoe on this stretch of the Wye between Brockweir and Chepstow, but it's a wide stretch of river with strong tides, and on our trip the wind picked up against us for the second half on the more open and exposed sections of the river. You definitely need something you can rely upon on this section of the Wye. This journey was part of the kayak cruise undertaken to paddle every section of the Wye River between Glasbury all the way down to Chepstow. This map shows how we broke the Wye River up into sections for our paddles. The Wye is one of the best kayaking rivers in Europe, if not the world. The total distance between Glasbury and Chepstow is about 105 miles. There's a public right of navigation all the way from the bridge at Wye down to Brockweir Bridge. From Brockweir Bridge down to Chepstow, the Wye is tidal, so there's also a right of navigation on those lower sections too. We have split the river up into sections between 7 miles to 12 miles during our undertaking to kayak the entire river from Glasbury down to Chepstow. We are uploading our blogs of our exploration of the Wye River to our website kayakcrew.co.uk. We're also uploading videos of all of our trips to the Wye Valley playlist of our YouTube channel. If you got value from this video, then please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel to get updates of our trip reports and product review videos. Our ever-growing range of videos covers the kayak cruise journeys along the Wye River, the Wales coast, the Monmouthshire and Brecon Canal, and many more routes. Please check out our website at kayakcrew.co.uk for blogs of our kayaking journeys together with product reviews and other super useful information. If you have any questions or comments, then please let us know by commenting below. Happy paddling from the kayak crew.